going to start our discussion on the Ming Dynasty of China. Alright, so the Ming is going to be the dynasty that follows the Yuan, the Mongols. And here we see the Ming Dynasty at its greatest extent. We see pretty humongous. Alright. So, the Forbidden City. If you recall, when the Mongols ruled China, they were horrible for the Chinese industry. And they created something called the Forbidden City, which was a place for anyone who wasn't Chinese in China. So the Ming, they're taking back China, and they go and make that their new capital, because it is no longer forbidden to the Chinese, the people that built it. That's right, the Mongols, they forced labor to create this amazing city, and didn't even let the people, countrymen live in there and visit it. Now it's the capital. Here we just see an aerial view. Pretty cool, huh? Alright, so we're going to see a big difference between Mongol rule and the Chinese rule of the Ming of China. So, as we discussed, the Mongols, they had many ministers doing lots of jobs. Because remember, the Mongols brought in foreigners because they were not enough educated Mongols to be able to do the work. They create a new law code. They go bring back the civil service exams. Now, yes, we know the Yuan had civil service exams that the Chinese couldn't pass. They bring back the original ones that made sure not only would bureaucrats be qualified for the jobs, but that they knew the Chinese classics, they knew Chinese law, literature, all that good stuff, Confucius as well. They also kept a lot of records, and one of the main things they wanted with these records is to make sure that people were purely Chinese, to make sure that you didn't have Mongol or foreign blood in you. Because think about how horrible the Mongols were to the Chinese. They wanted to stamp out of existence any of the remnants within China. And they're going to be a little harsh with the peasants compared to our Tang and Sung dynasties. It won't be like the Sui, which were working and taxing people like crazy. And it's certainly better than the Mongols. So we see the pendulum hasn't fully swung back to being a little bit better for the people. This is the law code, the Daming Lu law code. I'm not going to ask you about that, but it's interesting, and you get to see some fine Chinese characters right here. Next, we get to my favorite guy. So in all of China, for when I talk about in ancient and in medieval, Zheng He is absolutely amazing. So let's listen up. This is one of the treasure yunks that Zheng He's fleet had. Now, this thing is massive. Now you're like, Mr. Kenny, it's just a model, it's really small. Well, yeah, the model is small. You're going to see some size comparisons, and it's incredible. Okay, so Zheng He, I'm not going to ask you about some of these things right here, it's just some background. But he has a hard life starting. He actually is orphaned, and he's taken by the Chinese and made a slave. He actually winds up going and becoming a eunuch, which I'm not going to get into details about that. But he has a lot taken from him as a child. But in return, he's given an amazing education, and he is going to wind up becoming prominent within the royal court. He is going to become indispensable to the prince, and wind up eventually rising to some serious power and prominence in the Ming Dynasty. Now, he is given a fleet of ships, and he winds up actually being called Admiral of the Western Seas, which, if you think about it, so China is in the Eastern Hemisphere. And when you go when we talk about China, we talk about the majority of the population lives on the east coast of China, which is bordering, the East China Sea, South China Sea. So their water is to the east. So think about this. When he's made Admiral of the Western Seas, that basically means encompassing the entire globe. Because they knew, of course, that the world was round. Everybody did. So he is going to sail all over the world. There is speculation that, and some of this evidence comes from people's writings. Some of the evidence comes from shipwrecks that we found, that they may have gone to the west coast of North and South America. Yeah. They may have been in the Americas before Christopher Columbus and Europeans. Well, not before Leif Erikson, but that's another story another day. But definitely, we know for a fact all through Southeast Asia. We know for a fact also going through Africa and Arabia and India. One of the things that he would do is he would go and take things from those different places and bring them back to China. There's cool artwork of seeing Chinese ships bringing giraffes back to China and things like that. And we're going to see that this is going to be a huge fleet. 300 ships. We think 30,000 men might have traveled with him. And you don't need to know the specific little details here and there. You need to know he sailed around a lot with a humongous fleet. And you also need to know what he would do is he wanted everyone to acknowledge China's superiority. One of the purposes of Zheng He's sailing was to project power, to show how strong China was. It was also, of course, for trade and wealth and things like that, but the main thing was show the power of China. And so what would happen is Zheng He would come, and the ambassadors would have to kowtow before Zheng He, or the ambassador for the and what would happen is it's bowing your head down to the ground, laying prostrate 3 times. So 1, 2, 3, and of course this is going and acknowledging the superiority of China. And in return, you would get Chinese military help, which they had the best army in the world at this time. They'd get expensive gifts. They'd be able to trade, which think about how much wealth China had for the trade. So it wasn't a bad deal. So, I love this picture. Here is Christopher Columbus's ship. That's the little teeny tiny one with the cross on the sails in front. That's the model of the treasure yunk behind it. So, one of the finest European ships in the front, and in the background, one of Zheng He's ships. Here's another example. Vasco da Gama, a European explorer. We see that little tiny ship with the crosses on the sails. That's one of Europe's finest. See, 74 feet long. Seems pretty big, right? We have the Ming treasure ship, 400 feet long. So about 5 times the size. 18 feet wide was da Gama's, 170 feet wide. That's like 9 times the size. It's amazing, the size. Oh, it's so cool. Now, here's the thing though. When the emperor that instated Zheng He dies, when his friend dies, everything changes. The officials start saying, it's so expensive sending all of these ships out. It takes so much time, so much money. Also, they say, we're China. We're the greatest civilization that ever existed. Why do we want to take the ideas of foreigners? It's going to pollute what we have. So, the emperor stops the naval exploration. But he goes one step further, and this is what's heartbreaking, because world history might be very different if this didn't happen. So you see, China is going to go through a period where they're going to close themselves off to the outside world. The Chinese emperor burns Zheng He's entire fleet. in the dock, burns it. All of those ships wasted, those gigantic, beautiful, amazing ships, gone. Then, because they don't want others to get the idea of what Zheng He did, they burn all of the records. It's actually one of those things that there's a period where people thought Zheng He was a myth because they destroyed his stuff, and then they found statues of Zheng He, in the different places they visited. We had people who wrote about it. Thankfully, we have some of the diaries of the people who were on the ships. And like I said, we found shipwrecks all over, too, of these giant ships. So, although the Chinese tried to erase this history, which is crazy because, it shows how awesome it was, and yet they want to erase it. But we have some records still, thankfully. Here's just showing some of the exploration that we know he went. I mean, look at this. We see going all throughout Southeast Asia, going through India, going to the Persian Empire, going to Arabia, going to East Africa. And, I mean, like I said, we believe he may have gone to the west coast of the Americas. And thinking about how far he went going west, if he just went east a little bit more, he could have reached the Americas as well. We just see some examples of the ships. And the Chinese ships are going to be the biggest in the world for a long time. So we're going to end our discussion on the Ming there with kind of the beginning of the Ming and then Zheng He. I hope you enjoyed the lecture. I hope you got something out of it. I miss you guys. I hope you're doing well and having a good time. I'll talk to you later. Bye.